Your body was never just yours. That's the uncomfortable truth nobody says out loud. From the beginning, it gets shaped, told how to look, how to move, how much space it's allowed to take up, what's acceptable, what's too much, what's not enough. And it's subtle at first. Comments, looks, expectations. Then it gets louder. Systems step in. Capitalism decides what's profitable. Patriarchy decides what's desirable. And suddenly your body isn't a body anymore, it's a project. Something to fix, something to control. And the wild part? You start participating in it. You start monitoring yourself, adjusting, shrinking, performing. Not because you want to, but because it feels like survival. Because somewhere along the way, you learn that being accepted keeps you safer than being real. So you disconnect. You ignore hunger, or you overfeed it. You push through exhaustion like it doesn't matter. You override your instincts because you've been taught your instincts are unreliable. Especially if you're a woman. Especially if you're a woman of color. You learn to second-guess your own body before anyone else even has to. And over time, you stop feeling like you live in your body. You feel like you're managing it from the outside. That's the loss. Reclaiming it doesn't look soft. It's not a bubble bath and a journal entry. It's uncomfortable. It's messy. It's you realizing how much of your life has been shaped by things you didn't consciously choose. Reclaiming your body is saying, I'm going to listen to what I feel, even if it goes against what I've been taught. It's eating when you're hungry without negotiating with guilt. It's resting without needing to earn it. It's noticing when something feels off, even if you can't explain why yet. It's also anger. Quiet anger. Not explosive, not dramatic. Just a steady awareness that you were taught to abandon yourself. And you're done with that. And here's where it gets real. Your body keeps score, but it also keeps truth. That tension you feel around certain people, that's information. That exhaustion that doesn't go away with sleep, that's information. That random moment where you feel like you can finally breathe, that's information too. Your body is not the problem. It's the one thing that's been honest this whole time. Health in this context stops being about appearance. It becomes about alignment. Are you living in a way that your body doesn't have to fight? Because when you're constantly overriding yourself, your body pushes back. Not to punish you, but to get your attention. Reclaiming your body is learning that hunger isn't weakness. It's direction. Physical hunger, emotional hunger, creative hunger, all of it. You were taught to ignore it because a disconnected person is easier to control. But a person who listens to themselves, who trusts their own signals, who doesn't need constant external approval, that person is harder to shape, harder to sell to, harder to silence. And that's the point. So this isn't about becoming better. It's about becoming harder to manipulate. It's about coming back into your body fully, even if it's inconvenient. Even if it makes your life look different than what you were told it should be. Because at the end of the day, sovereignty doesn't start in your mindset. It starts in your body. And once you take that back, everything else has to adjust. There's a reason people get uncomfortable when women start really listening to themselves. Because it stops looking predictable. You stop explaining yourself as much. You stop over-accommodating. You start moving off instinct instead of permission. And that instinct, it doesn't always look nice. It doesn't always look logical. Sometimes it looks like pulling away without warning. Sometimes it looks like saying no with no backup explanation. Sometimes it looks like wanting more than what you were told was realistic. That's where people start calling it irrational. But it's not irrational. It's just not filtered. Your body doesn't speak in polite language. It speaks in sensation. In tension, in sudden clarity, in gut reactions that show up before your mind has time to sanitize them. And when you actually follow that, that's where it starts to feel like something else entirely, almost like you're tapping into something older than what you were taught. Call it intuition, call it instinct, call it something spiritual if you want, but it's real. There's a version of you that isn't constantly negotiating with the world, a version that just knows. Not in a loud, dramatic way, more like a quiet certainty that doesn't need validation. And once you feel that, even once, It's hard to go back, because now you can tell the difference between what's yours and what was placed on you. You start noticing how often you were trained to override yourself for the sake of being digestible, more likable, less threatening, especially under systems that benefit from women being disconnected. Capitalism loves a woman who doesn't trust herself. Patriarchy thrives on it, because if you don't trust yourself, you're easier to guide, easier to sell to, easier to shape. But when you start trusting your body, you don't move the same. You become harder to predict. And that unpredictability gets labeled as dangerous, dramatic, too much. But really, it's just autonomy. And yeah, there's something almost magnetic about that. Not in a surface-level glamour way. Not performative. Not curated for approval. It's deeper than that. It's the kind of presence that comes from being fully in yourself. The kind where you're not scanning the room to see how you're being perceived. You're just there, grounded, aware, unavailable, for manipulation in the ways you used to be. That's what people feel. That's what draws attention. And that's why it's been discouraged for so long. Because a woman who is fully in her body, fully aware of her instincts, fully connected to what she wants, she doesn't wait to be chosen. She doesn't need to be managed. She doesn't shrink to make other people comfortable. She moves. And not everyone knows what to do with that. And then there's this part that doesn't get talked about enough. When you come back into your body, you don't just feel the good things. You feel everything. The anger you buried, the grief you pushed down, the moments you ignored because it was easier to keep going than to stop and process. It all comes back online. That's the part people avoid, because it's intense. It's inconvenient. It doesn't fit into a clean, aesthetic version of healing. But that intensity, that's energy. The same energy you were taught to suppress is the same energy that fuels your clarity, your boundaries, your creativity, your sense of self. Nothing new is being added. It was always there. It was just redirected or numbed out. So when people talk about stepping into power, they skip this part. Power isn't something you gain. It's something you stop blocking. And yeah, it can feel almost taboo to let yourself have it fully. To trust your desires without immediately questioning them. To take up space without softening it. To feel anger without turning it inward. That's not what most women were trained to do. But once you start, you realize something. You were never too much. You were just never meant to be that easy to control.